All right, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about fascism. So we hear claims about how Trump is a fascist and how the right is full of a bunch of Nazi fascists and all sort of stuff. We hear the word fascism thrown at the right a lot. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how that just doesn't make sense based on what conservative principles are, as well as what the basis of fascism was founded on. So, fascism is always placed as a political ideology of the far right. But to understand where fascism originated to, you obviously have to look back at the founder of fascism, right? So we know, for example, Karl Marx, created the idea of communism, and he wrote about it. So Giovanni Gentile was the founder of fascism. He was the person who wrote the book Origins of Doctrine of Fascism. And he was a socialist, and Karl Marx was one of his mentors. So when you read quotes from Gentile, you're gonna see a lot of connections in quotes with Hitler and Mussolini, right? Because they're all fascists. So Gentile believed in individuals collectively belonging to the state. He said, quote, "For fascism, the state and the individual are one, or better, perhaps, the state and the individual are terms that are inseparable in a necessary synthesis," end quote. So then Mussolini came along, and he basically put Gentile's words into action, saying, quote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state," end quote. And then you have Hitler also talking about limiting individual rights. He said society's needs come before the individual's needs. So things like that. So basically, you have all three of these famous fascists in history, and they all believed that the best society was one where the rights of individuals were suppressed in order to improve society as a whole. And in order to achieve this, the state must expand. This is a far contrast from everything the right wing believes. Individual freedom is at the core beliefs of the right wing. Now you might say, well, that's not true. Well, let me prove it to you. Let me give you some examples of what the right wing believes and what they advocate for. The right to bear arms, right? The freedom to own a gun. Free speech, regardless of whether you think it's hurtful or not. Rights to refuse service with private businesses, and less government control overall in their lives. My point is that fascism believes the exact opposite of what the right believes. Fascism believes in sacrificing individuality for the betterment of the community. Hitler said, quote, "We understand only the individual's capacity to make sacrifices for the community, for his fellow man," end quote. If anything, this sounds like something that would be said on the far left. How often do we hear people like Bernie Sanders talking about needing to do what is better for the community rather than for the individual? The concept of helping the community above the individual is core leftist doctrine, even today. The slogan, quote, "The government is the only thing we all belong to," was even used at the 2012 DNC. They might as well have been quoting Gentile. The left constantly preaches limiting rights to better the rights of society, which is the founding principle of fascism according to Gentile, the founder of the political philosophy itself. We see the left demanding that bakers make cakes for events that go against their religious beliefs. We see the left calling for amending the right to bear arms or putting extreme restrictions on it. We see the left demand that freedom of speech be limited to prevent hate speech. The concept of limiting individual freedoms and expanding the government is a belief of the left, not of the right. It is that same belief that founded fascism according to the founder of the political philosophy itself. So, there's a lot of evidence right there. If you look at the core principles of fascism, expanding government to the point where society benefits on the limitations of individual rights, you'll find that it contradicts everything that conservatives believe in, right? All these different things, libertarianism, I think, is more often placed on the right than it is on the left, unless, you consider yourself, wanting to make pot legal, or, gay rights legal, which, I agree with those things from the left. But if you look at the principles of expanding the government and lowering individual rights with the intent of bettering the community's and society's experience, you're going to find that fascism has so much more in common with the left side of the political spectrum than it does with the right.